The Making Your Business Less Dependent on You podcast, sponsored by A4G Chartered Accountants and Durban Offshoring. I've got a really interesting guest today who I'll introduce to you shortly. In this podcast, we're going to find out what the typical small business owner can learn from the franchise world, and maybe whether franchising is something for you to consider as well. Before we get started though, I just wanted to take a moment to briefly mention our two sponsors. A4G are an accountancy practice in Kent near Brands Hatch with 30 years of uninterrupted growth, specialising in helping business owners deal with all the challenges of growth. Durban Offshoring, our other sponsor, recruit high-quality professional desk-based staff in any profession in Durban, South Africa, to work for UK businesses. So, let me introduce you to my guest, Danny Hanlon. Danny is the Chief Operating Officer of Granite and Trend Transformations UK, which is a nationwide franchise, which I'll get Danny to tell you about. Danny has 25 years of franchise experience and is passionate about the home improvement world. He's well known in his field for his creative strategic thinking and motivating style. Danny was in effect the company's first employee, contributing significantly to the brand's growth in Australia and North America before permanently relocating to the United Kingdom to do it all again. He now oversees the group's EU operations based from its headquarters in Tunbridge Wells. The reason I wanted to get Danny on the podcast was twofold, really. First of all, there may be some of you who are in service industries and aren't sure how to grow it further without the considerable stresses that come with building up a bigger workforce. And secondly, for those of you who work on your own or only have 2 or 3 staff, so are pretty stretched, it's that whole thing about thinking of your business as if it is the first franchise, even if you have no intention of ever franchising yourself. So, first question, Danny. What does Tunbridge Wells have that Australia doesn't?
Oh gosh, Malcolm. You know, I came here in 2004, right, to help establish the company, and I really thought that I would be here for 2 years and that I would return to Australia. And, you know, since being here, I fall in love with this country. It's home now for me. It's possibly the longest I've ever spent anywhere. And I love the fact that you can be in the city in one moment. You got these beautiful green fields, in another moment, which is not too far away from the city. I love all the history that's over here, which we obviously don't have in Australia. I love the people too. You know, I once heard a stat that the UK was something like in the top 3 countries in terms of giving money to charities. And I think that just speaks volumes to the values of the people that live in this place. But I love the people here. I think it's funny. I love the pubs, the culture, all those kind of things. So for me, it's like my second home, but obviously the place where I'm going to stay, really. I enjoy it so much. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's just confirm what I've always thought, that Australia was a bit overrated, really. So
yeah, you can say that, Lizanne.
all that sunshine and, you know.
I guess I get the best of both worlds, right? I get to go home every couple of years to see family and friends and things like that. So I have that luxury also. But yeah, you're right. We don't have seasons in Australia. It's pretty temperate all year round. So the fact you have seasons here too is something that was quite novel when I first got here. But yeah, it's a fun place. People beat it up too much. I love it here. So anyway.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Well, just for sort of a bit of context, really, would you mind just telling us about what Granite and Trend Transformations do? That'll help everyone make a bit more sense of some of the answers to the questions.
Yeah, sure, Malcolm. So Granite Transformations, we're a franchise brand. We're in the home improvement market. We renovate kitchens, and we do it in a very unique way. We have a very unique material, which we call Ethereum. It's essentially a quartz and a granite that is only 7 millimeters in thickness, and we apply it over existing kitchen worktops. So rather than tear out your kitchen worktop and damage the splashback and all of those sorts of things, we come in and we can transform that worktop in as little as 1 day. And the way that we do that is that we have a franchise network, a global franchise network, but in the UK we have about 20 franchisees, and they run retail premises in terms of like showrooms, as well as small factories. So they're responsible for finding the business and generating the leads. They then go into the client's home and they'll sell the product. And once that sale takes place, they have their technical team who go in and make a cardboard template of the existing kitchen work surface. And then that cardboard template is taken back to their factories where they cut the exact shapes and patterns of the material. They put the edges on it, like the returns on it, and then it goes back out to site and it's all installed in one day. We change the sink and the hob at the same times. And essentially, it's like a shoebox lid that goes over the existing work surface.
Yeah.
We give it a lifetime warranty. We've got something like 36 different colors. And we've converted over 1 million kitchens using this particular process since 1996, which is when the company started. There are a lot of add-ons that we've improved on the franchise model over the years. So like these days, about 27% of our business is also door replacement, where we'll take all the old kitchen doors off and we put new kitchen doors on with soft close hinges, soft close runners. We can improve the functionality of the kitchen as well, where we'll put a lot of like different hardware options in there and convert a lot of those, what would be kind of awkward spaces in the kitchens where people would have to get down in the back of the cupboard to actually drawers that come out to you. So from a functionality point of view, it can be easier to use your kitchen. And in a lot of cases, the actual structure of the kitchen is sound. It's in good shape. It's just that it needs modernizing in terms of colors and materials. So, and that's what our customers love about the service that we provide.
Yeah, fantastic. So just for the everybody knows the word franchising and many people know what it is, but I guess there'll be some of our listeners that won't be completely familiar with how a franchising model works. So do you mind just sort of explaining that for everyone?
Yeah, of course. So, I guess essentially a franchise it's a business arrangement where an established company, which is called the franchisor, licenses its operations, its products, branding, its knowledge to independent operators, and those independent operators are called franchisees, and they do that in exchange for a fee. The franchisee then has the right to sell the company's products and services under its name for a limited period of time. In our case, our franchise agreements are 5 years long. A lot of our franchisees renew at that point, right? There's this automatic right of renewal and a renewal process that we go through. In fact, we have a very mature network. A lot of our franchisees are in their 20th year of operating now. So, and the fees, there's an initial franchise fee that you would traditionally pay, and that will get you kind of your onboarding training, perhaps some sales and marketing material to get started, those kinds of things. And then there's ongoing fees. Probably people are familiar with the term royalty. So royalty is one of those ongoing fees. We call it in the UK a management service fee because those funds tend to pay for the support that our franchisees receive. And then other franchise brands, and it's true of ours, we have what we call a national marketing levy, where our franchisees will pay a percentage of their revenue into a central fund, and then we'll use that fund to promote the brand on a kind of a national level, right? So they tend to be kind of the ongoing fees with our brand as well. Because we're selling a product, we sell the slabs of quartz and granite to our franchisees. We make a margin on the sale of those products into our franchisees also. So that's essentially how a franchise works. There's lots of different alterations of that depending on what kind of sector the brands operate in. But yeah, that's essentially how they work.
So what would you consider to sort of be the biggest benefit to somebody becoming a franchisee?
I think, biggest benefit of franchisee is, I think, first of all, it's less risky, right? I heard stats that like less than 60% of new businesses survive past 3 years. I think that's a well-known stat in the UK. The failure rates within franchising are correspondingly very, very low. In fact, over the last 20 years consecutively, 90% of all UK franchisees have reported profitability over the previous 12-month period, right? So I think that speaks volumes to the success of how a franchise model works. And the reason for that being less risky is that other people have done it before you. And I think also with every franchise that joins a system, um, you get new learnings from it, and you get an opportunity to refine your model even further based on the skill and experience that that incoming franchisee brings, because they all add something to it. So certainly it's less risky in terms of a startup. It should give you a competitive edge, right? Whether that's a product or a service or both that brand is promoting, you should get a competitive edge out of it. The other reason for less failure is that there's a lot of training and support that goes into franchising. I think when you start a business, it can be a very lonely place. Quite often, you feel like you're the only one doing this. With franchising, you have other franchisees around you. You have the support of a team that are employed by the franchisor to help guide you, so that hopefully you're not making the same mistakes as a new startup would do. So that training and support, there's a lot of value in that. You don't need any kind of previous experience to run a franchise either. I think that's important to point out because of that training and support that's offered. And with all that, it gives you an opportunity to really hit the ground running, right? Your learning curve, if you like, when you start a business should be greatly reduced if you're joining a franchise brand, because
Yeah,
others have done that learning for you, right? So hopefully you're not making those same kind of mistakes.
yeah,
In our brand, you get an exclusive territory to operate in, which I think is kind of neat and novel as well. And with our franchisees, we get an opportunity to pool our resources. So yes, we provide the principal product to our franchisees in terms of quartz and granite slabs, but there are other ancillary products that our franchisees have an opportunity to sell, such as, door replacement. We talked about appliances. We sell like Kandine flooring as well, like luxury vinyl flooring. So, using the bulk buying power of the group, we negotiate heavily with those third-party suppliers, and we drive down our prices for our franchisees so they can make a higher margin when they sell those ancillary products. So it has an immense amount of benefits to it, I guess, and it makes it a fun place to be in. There are a couple of advantages for franchisors, so people looking to probably franchise their brand as well. So I guess you have an opportunity to use other people's money to expand your brand, right? So other people's capital. I guess our franchisees certainly have a vested interest in ensuring that business unit succeeds, as opposed to a manager of a store. They have an owned interest in that store, and therefore they fight harder to make it work,
yeah,
It gives you a chance to expand your brand very rapidly. Every new franchisee that we recruit gives an injection of enthusiasm within the network, and they all bring fresh thinking and fresh ideas based on whatever kind of background that they had before they joined us. Some of the best ideas that have helped to enhance our franchise model have come from our franchise owners themselves. So there's benefits to being a franchisor and a lot of benefits to being a franchisee. And that's the great thing, that this partnership of franchising just works very, very well.
yeah. But it was interesting what you're saying about the benefit of learning from other people. So that's sort of one of the themes of our podcast before and still to come is that there's I call it the 3 degrees of learning. You've got people that don't learn from their own mistakes. Hopefully most people are smart enough to learn from their mistakes, but even better is if you can learn from other people's mistakes, and because then there's no cost attached to that. And of course, that's the biggest benefit of being a franchisee, is that you get to learn from all the mistakes, and that's what the learning curve is, and you get to jump on the learning curve a lot further up.
It is, Malcolm. And it's interesting when you watch the life cycle of a franchise owner. They'll start off very enthusiastic. They'll see a great deal of value in shortcutting all those learnings, not making those mistakes. So initially, they see a great deal of value in paying the fees to the franchisor. Then there comes a period where they almost, well, what we call it in franchising, you're a child and you're learning, and then you go through the teenage years where you get a little bit grizzly with your franchisor, because like, why am I paying them all these fees when I know this stuff? and then you turn into a mature franchisee where you realize that actually there's this codependence and you really need each other to be doing your respective roles in order to create success. So there's
Yeah.
this that psychological um, curve of a franchisee is kind of interesting to watch over the years. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
anything that reduces and helps people become more successful initially is a great thing. And I guess franchising, a lot of people have heard of it, but you'd be surprised about the number of businesses that are franchised. Just in the UK alone, franchising adds 17.2 billion per annum to the GDP, which makes up about 1% of GDP across the UK. And there's just over 700,000 people employed in franchising. So it's a
Yeah.
very big sector, really.
Well, if ever I get dragged into that place with the golden arches outside, the one thing I always want to know, because obviously that's not actually McDonald's that's trading from there. That's one of their franchisees, isn't it? And I always think somewhere in this building is a little sign that actually says the name of the real company that is trading here. And so I've never seen it, no matter how hard I look, I can never see it. But it must be somewhere in that building, because you actually have to say what the name of the company is. So, Fred and Barbara Restaurants Limited trading as McDonald's or something. It must be somewhere. So
Yeah, you are
it's
absolutely
good.
right. And we need to do the same in our operations as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if your business is at a stage where you feel you're starting to perfect the model, maybe, and are thinking about franchising as the next stage, what would be your advice for how to get started on that part of the journey?
Um, I think you need to determine if franchising is right for you, right? I think franchising needs to be kind of aligned with your long-term goals, right? And certainly your own values, because you are then opening your business and your brands to partnership, all right, with many other people. And by the way, all franchisees have opinions on how the business should be run. So I think you need to just be aware of that going into it. I think you need to evaluate the franchisee's potential, so consider the franchisee's cost of starting the business, the potential return on investment for them, what competitors they're going to be up against, kind of target customers, and then other nearby franchisees that they may be up against as well. So all those things need to be taken into consideration. You want to create a business plan, that will kind of help you plan for challenges and opportunities, and certainly securing the finance that you need to get your franchise venture underway. You need to prepare a operations manual. You might also need to register your trademarks. You want to certainly create a franchise sales strategy and budget, right? Because when you do open, you're going to be recruiting new franchises to your brand. So you're going to have to put some marketing budget and a strategy behind that to, attract new investors. And then you're going to have to create a franchise agreement as well, right? Which is the contract that outlines the terms in which the franchisor is going to grant the franchisee the right to use their business model and trademarks and training and support and all those kind of things. That all sounds pretty complicated and there's a lot to take in. I appreciate that. But, the great thing is that there's a lot of really good franchise consultants out there in the UK, and they can help guide anybody through that process who may be thinking about it. And I think the first place to kind of look for those consultants is probably through the British Franchise Association. They have a website, they have affiliated professionals on there as well as other franchise brands. And you can find a list of franchise consultants on there. They've been very heavily vetted, right? And they do things the right way. So yeah, there's some good people, and I would get educated, learn as much as you possibly can about franchising, and then start to set up some meetings with some people.
So I guess you sort of, one of the things you mentioned in there was the dreaded operations manual, and I mean, obviously, if you've got the right consultant on board, that's something they'll be able to help you with. But that most of what's got to go in there has got to come from you and your team, I guess. As
Yeah,
you're the ones that know how it all works.
yeah, you're right. You're right. And listen, it's a bugbear for any franchisor or any business. By the way, I think every business should have a kind of an operations manual, right? I think from just a disaster recovery point of view, from a best way of doing business point of view, from training new employees, all those sorts of things, but we don't always get the time to do it because they're arduous tasks. They take a long time, and they quite often get put on the back burner. So yes, you do need to create one. You are right though, Malcolm. It needs to come from the people, that do those particular roles, I guess. And we provide. Well, we kind of approach it in such a way as delegate, divide, and conquer. So, on our franchise support team, we have experts that look after marketing, sales, operations, the technical part of a business, and also the finance. So what we tend to do is to delegate the particular part of the operations manual to those individuals. And, I guess the best way to do it is just to think about it very methodically. And, each one of those people started by setting up a Word document and very thoroughly documenting every single process that needs to happen. And then we review it, we vet it. I think it's always good practice to kind of get someone who is not familiar with that particular process or procedure to also go through that task. And that way you can assess whether you've actually missed anything or it's all documented correctly because they do it right the first time. And you just got to do it. You just got to reserve time to do it. And I think once it's done, it's a wonderful resource for training new employees. Certainly franchising, it's essential. You need it, because so much of what is drafted in the franchise agreement links back to the operations manual. The two work hand in hand. So, and then our challenge as a franchisor really is to stay on top of that operations manual. I guess there are always business improvements. We're always tightening up on procedures, if you like. So to review that operations manual every 6 months, every 12 months, and update it and then reissue it to your franchisees is something that's, I think, very, very important.
And I guess as franchisor, your brand, the reputation of your brand is at stake if people go rogue on some of those operations as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the challenge of any franchise brand is to establish consistency from one location to another. And you mentioned McDonald's. I think it's something that they just do so well. Regardless of whether you're in a McDonald's in Tunbridge Wells or a McDonald's in Manchester, the experience is the same, right? And
well, different types of customers, Danny, surely. Tunbridge Wells, I mean, come on.
I've visited McDonald's in both locations. I love it.
Yeah.
So but you're right. It's like establishing that consistency is so important. That's where the operations manual comes in. It's also where IT and a whole lot of other things that support that operations manual play a big part.
So there's sort of particular characteristics that you look for in a franchisee, some sort of perhaps some non-negotiable characteristics.
Yeah, when I look at our franchisees, there are always things that they have in common, I guess. I think first of all, with our particular brand, and ours is not an easy business to run, Malcolm, not by any stretch of the imagination, because you're running a retail element and you're running a manufacturing element, right? So they're two parts that are challenging, really. So I think our franchisees, they're very good at man management and people recruitment. They're very good at establishing very clear goals and a vision and getting people excited and enthusiastic about that. They're great at training. They're very ambitious. And fundamentally, they have to care about home renovations, right? Because it's the sector that we operate in. So they really enjoy the project side of things, I guess, going into a kitchen and converting it in as little as one day, or some cases when we do a more elaborate makeover, it might take a week. But they're very proud of the finished product, right? You can sense that in the photos that they show you and those kinds of things. So, yeah, I guess all of those kinds of characteristics are really what we look for in a successful franchisee. But the managing a team is probably one of the most important for us.
The ability to be able to manage a team.
Yeah, the ability to manage a team. We in our brand, you're dealing with a lot of different characters. I mean, we have salespeople that are going into clients' homes, and they have to be closing sales every single day and every month. They've got targets to reach. Then you're managing a technical team as well of like very skilled um, kitchen fitters. Uh, the people that fabricate our worktops in their factories are perhaps not as skilled as the kitchen fitters, but they're good with their hands. And then you've got your showroom hosts as well, right, that are manning all the showrooms and dealing with the initial inquiries. So they're all very different characters. They all have very different motivations, if you like. And I think that's why it's very important that our franchisees are great at man management.
And so one of the things that's sort of of interest to me, because I mean, as you know, I've sort of told you about how the systems we've got at our office, and but we're an office-based business, so it's not often when our staff have got to go outside of our office and not have access to our systems and checklists, etc. So your franchisees and your franchisee staff are going into people's homes, and I mean, did they sort of take a big procedures manual with them, or is there a degree of training that's required so they know what they're doing?
Yeah, degree of training, really. I think we have like sales aids that we give them. So they all have a sales kit and that they're kitted out with brochures, they're kitted out with hard samples. We try to bring the kind of the showroom experience into our customers' homes. There are a lot of customers that we have, Malcolm, believe it or not, that will never go to our showroom. They just like the convenience of us coming out to see them. So we have a full sales pack that they'll take in, and they're trained on how to do that sales process, if you like, kind of the needs assessment and finding out what is really important to the client, and then presenting the products, and then moving into kind of the pre-close and closing the deal. We always make a brand promise that we leave a quote with the client on the day, so we work out the prices then and there whilst we're in the kitchen, and we will leave them a quote that has very detailed terms and conditions on it, and we'll try and close the deal on the day as well, so we'll take a deposit. But all of that is covered off in the training that we provide to our franchisees. And then we have what we call a FAST team, a franchise advisory and support team, and that's made up of like experts in particular fields. So we have someone who looks after our marketing, our sales, our operations, all the technical side of our business, and then the finance. So in the case where a franchisee might be having some challenges in the sales area, for example, and they want our sales coach to go out with them or with one of their salespeople for a day, then we can provide that kind of support. So not only is there the initial training, but then there's the ongoing support that we provide as well. There are those things, and I think that's quite important that process is done. One, to establish consistency and standard, and just keeps everybody sharp and engaged.
Brilliant. So one of the big challenges that most of our clients are finding at the moment is the difficulty in getting good staff and staff that they can trust and rely on. So just I'm sort of asking all of my guests this question really, but your franchisees, is that a challenge for them at the moment, or do you think it's easier for them to find staff because they've got this procedures manual behind them?
Listen, it's I would go as far as saying behind generating leads, right? It's probably equally up there as the next biggest challenge within our franchise system, right? Finding people, and particularly for us, it's like installers for the last couple of years, especially as we came out of COVID, because there was this huge bounce in home improvements, and finding good installers was very difficult, and they were very expensive as well. So, in short, no, it's a challenge. I think whether you're an independent business owner or part of a franchise, I guess there's some things that we do as a franchise brand which make it a little easier for our franchisees. Like when we take on a new franchisee, I mean, a lot of those business owners have never hired kitchen fitters before. Some of them have never hired salespeople before. So we have a set of job adverts and also CVs that they can use. We have various platforms that we use to post those ads and recruit people. We can put them in touch with also employment recruitment agencies that we've worked with in the past. So we can help out in that area. The other thing is that the FAST team find themselves getting involved in the interview process, the first lot of interviews that a new franchisee will do, because that way we understand what key questions to ask. We really know what we're looking for in an individual, whether it's an installer or salesperson that we're recruiting. So I think our new franchisees really find that service valuable to begin with. And then once they've got a handle on it, then they find recruitment a little bit easier thereafter, you know. But listen, it's a challenge. I think, you know, from my perspective, I think people broadly fall into kind of two categories, and it only comes with experience that you spot this. And they're kind of, I heard this analogy once, they're either drains or radiators, right? People either drain energy from you or they radiate energy, right? And so we tend to look for characters that will fall into the radiator bucket, and they're the ones that we like to recruit, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because some of what you do is kind of where our worlds meet a little bit, really, because we obviously for our clients, their owner managers, they tend to be good at what they're, you know, whatever it is that they do, and then, you know, not have vast experience in all the other areas. So, you know, if they were a lorry driver originally, they interview somebody to be a lorry driver, they know within 20 minutes whether this person's any good or not. If they're interviewing somebody to do sales or bookkeeping or whatever, those people can often pull the wool over their eyes and can be doing a terrible job for, you know, 6 to 12 months even before they realise. And having that, you know, that's where we help out with an interview process, particularly on financial roles, but sometimes on others as well, because you know, you only know what you know, really, and that's when you need some help from somebody else.
Yeah, I think so. That's a great service that you provide too, Malcolm. You know, I think business owners should certainly look to kind of leverage that. I think the more help you can get, but, you know, it even works with us when we recruit new franchisees. You know, years ago, I mean, I used to be the only one that would recruit them. These days, we tend to have our entire FAST team kind of form a view and opinion of those new recruits before we let them come into the business and buy a franchise. And so I think the more eyes and the more opinions you have during that interview process, the better off. The better off you are. Yeah. So no, I absolutely agree, because the cost of bringing someone who is wrong into a business is immense. You know, I mean, if they're toxic or dark matter, as we call them, then they tend to infect others in the workplace, and you know, they drive down morale. And I think nothing destroys great employees more than business leaders who put up and tiptoe around and tolerate bad employees, right? And we've probably all been guilty of that at one point or another in our careers. I know I certainly have. So yeah, I think, you know, getting the right people is absolutely key. And the franchisees that join us and absolutely fly in their first couple of years and do really well, when I look back at that, they've got the right people from the beginning. The ones that struggle go through a period of their first year where they might replace the installer 2 or 3 times, same with the salesperson, and they're struggling on that recruitment point of view. So yeah, it's such an important point for any business people.
Yeah, well, we one of my clients who runs a sort of quite specialised recruitment business, he's quite choosy about who he places with his clients. And he said to me, he said the problem with our industry is that there's just the same old bad pennies going round all the companies. And I said, that's in every industry. I said, we've all got our bad pennies. And we had somebody work for us for a couple of years. I mean, as anyone who knows A4G will know, almost all of our team on the on the client-facing side originally came out of school and sort of worked their way through. But every now and again we've had to, we just had a little gap in a particular area, and we've had to take somebody on. And we took on this guy who worked for us for about 18 months, and was perhaps the most toxic person that I've ever had working in the organisation. I mean, I didn't know it for took me about 6-9 months at least until I realised, all the problems he was causing, and some of that was possibly to be covering up the poor quality of work he was doing. And anyway, finally, I'd sort of almost got him cornered. At which point he handed his notice in, and off he went. And a few years later, somebody told me about a firm that was, the owners were looking to retire, and would I be interested? And it wasn't, we weren't really interested, but I'll always have a little look. So I went onto their website, and of course, there he is on their website as one of the senior managers. So I thought, well, even if I was interested, I'm not now, because and it wasn't the place he'd gone to, because these people, they can hang it out for a couple of years, can't they? But then they're off again. And one of the qualities that those people have is that they're good at interviews, because they've done so many of them. So,
yeah,
and,
you're right.
so you just think, I've had a lot of clients that have had big disasters, and it always started with them taking somebody on as, oh, they've done this and they've got this, and there's a little love affair for 3 months before they realise that they're actually perhaps the worst person they've ever taken on. So
Yeah, and you're right. Like, I'm always curious about those kind of people. If you look at those who work around them as well when they're at various companies, how many good people in companies that they actually drive away, that you lose good employees because they're just not, they're not happy to work alongside this kind of toxic person. Yeah. You got to identify them quick, which can be difficult, can't it? And then remove them as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah, well, this is interestingly. So when he joined, we had somebody else who worked for us, who was quite a hard worker actually, but was one of the most miserable people I've ever worked with. But we kind of had him a bit surrounded, really. So just the fact he was a bit negative and moany and about everything, not just his day-to-day work life, but his football team and the weather and the government, everything he was negative about. But when this other guy came in, they were sort of magnetically attracted to each other, and they often say it takes one bad apple to ruin a barrel. My view is it takes two. And you can surround the one bad apple, but get two people together. And it's, in 29 years, it's probably one of the most difficult times I've had. These two fairly senior people just causing us loads of grief. So you've got to, if you get some help for that interview process. Check your references. Keep an eye on people. People can talk the talk when in the interview and in the first few weeks, but the proof of the pudding is 2 or 3 months in, is actually really looking at the quality of the work they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree.
Yeah, good. So, bit of advice for our small business owners from the franchise world. I mean, what would be your number one tip on delegation?
Oh, delegation? Gosh. I mean, look, to be honest with you, Malcolm, years ago, I wasn't very good at delegation. I think it's probably something that comes with experience too. When I look back at it, I was probably a bit of a perfectionist when I was younger,
That's what you
and
want in a franchisor, though, isn't it? That's the point, isn't it? You got to get it all in
you
that procedures manual, right?
You think so, right? But then what I found, and it's only through reflection I draw on this, that it's like I found it very difficult to delegate and let things go because I didn't think anybody could do as good a job as me. Falsely, that's a false belief too, by the way. And I think I suffered. I think probably the companies they were looking at after at the time suffered, and certainly the people around me suffered. So, I think with delegation, I think it's for me, it was a case of getting out of my own way. I think it was a case of trusting those around me, letting them showcase their talents. I think it came with experience and age with me where I got more comfortable with that. And thank goodness I got hold of that, right? Because I got an incredible team of passionate people around me now and that care very deeply about the success of franchisees, and they continue to do amazing stuff every day. So, yeah, I think it's just you have to trust those around you, really. I think be very clear in terms of like who needs to do what. Check in with people regularly to see if they need any kind of support from you, and then just let them get on with it. Don't micromanage them, right? I've been on the receiving end of micromanagement when I was very young and didn't like it. I think setting very clear kind of time expectations also helps everybody concerned when you're kind of going through delegation. But yeah, that would be my advice. I think I'm much better at it now than what I was many years ago. But you learn with experience, don't you?
Sort of one last question, really, for there's most of the people listening to the podcast are not franchisors or indeed franchisees. So even whether they're thinking about it or not, but what do you think for those businesses might be the biggest lesson that they could learn from the franchise world?
I would say it's, in franchising, you need to be very disciplined in terms of process, procedures, documenting it all, because you need to be able to share that with franchisees. And I think that would probably be the greatest thing to learn from franchising, really. I think sometimes when we run small businesses, you just get caught up and there's an assumption that everybody knows what they're doing, and you don't document it. And next minute you have a key employee leave and you think, oh gosh, now I need to train this new individual. And you find that you've got no resources to share with them or guide them,
Yeah.
Whereas if everything was documented, then you would perhaps make that transition a little easier.
Yeah.
But I think that's the greatest thing that franchising offers other small businesses, is to kind of get in that franchising mindset of doing all of those best practices, Malcolm. And who knows, right? You might just have a business that is absolutely franchisable. And as you go through that process, you might actually think, you know what, we've got something here that's pretty unique.
Yeah.
I've done all the work, and now let's franchise it and expand my own brand. I think there are a lot of great businesses out there who don't consider franchising as a way of expanding their brand. And actually, if they did, they would, one, it would be more rewarding for them from a profitability and earning point of view. But you'd grow something that into a national brand that could be incredible and help a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Fantastic. Danny, thank you ever so much for that. Good to get an Antipodean view on the challenges in this podcast. So many thanks, and I know I'll be seeing you soon anyway. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good, Malcolm. I really enjoyed today's podcast, my first podcast. So thank you very much for inviting me on, and I hope people found it really helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy your weekend, Malcolm.
Yeah. Cheers, Danny.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Don't forget to head over to the websites of our sponsors, Durban Offshoring and A4G LLP,